Marcy was a bridesmaid at my sister Jane's wedding. Soon after graduating from college, Jane met Jim. As one of the groomsmen, I was paired with Marcy, and we hit it off from the start. She was a year older than me, but at 19 I didn't think that was a big deal. Although Marcy wasn't what you'd call beautiful or sexy, she did look pretty. Her parents kept her on a pretty tight rope since she still lived at home. She was the eldest in the family. All three of her siblings were boys. Because she spent a lot of time helping around the house, she never dated in high school, only going to dances and sporting events with friends. While attending a local college, she met my sister. I didn't realize it on the first 2 dates, but she told my parents that she was looking around my sister's house. I thought it was weird meeting her there, but when I finally asked her about it, she told me that she didn't want to get in trouble with her parents for dating me. On the third date, I picked her up at her house. She talked to her parents about how she was old enough to make her own choices. We went to the cinema and hit it off on the way home. Sex took place only after 2 dates. It all happened on Saturday afternoon. We went to the movies again, and I spilled nacho cheese on my pants. Since we were going to grab something to eat after the movie, we stopped by my house so I could change clothes. My parents were not there that day, so the house was left to us. We made love. This was the first time for both her and me. I don't want my parents to know that I am in love. Marcy, you're 21, you should be able to do what you want. Please, Barry, not now. I love my parents and don't want them to think I'm having sex. I know it's stupid for most people, but that's how I feel. Okay, anything to be with you. I've never felt anything so good. My father was a truck driver. He used to travel around the United States, but now he just commuted around town so he could be home most evenings. When I graduated from high school, he got me a job at the same company. I worked primarily as a loader, but I also learned to drive trucks and bring them to the dock. I studied for my CDL license so that in the future I will be able to take the test and drive large machines. Although I made good money working the docks, I could have done a better job running the rigs. Things were going pretty well for me until one day I got a call from Marcy. Oh, crap. Barry, I just went to the doctor and she told me I'm pregnant. What should we do? She cried as she spoke. It was like someone hit me on the head with a hammer. Marcy was about to have a baby. As far as I know, he was mine. I was too young to get married and raise children. I wanted to have time to enjoy life and try out a lot of women. What was I going to do? Later, my sister Jane called me. Barry, I just talked to Marcy. What's happening? She's pregnant. I know she's pregnant. Are you going to ask her to marry you? You know she's always loved you, and you're the only guy she's ever been with. Oh my God, she tells you everything. Calm down, Barry. I told you we're best friends. Now, there aren't many people she can talk to about her situation. She knows she has to tell her parents about this soon, and that's why I was wondering, what were you thinking? Mom and Dad won't be the happiest couple either. She was silent for a few seconds before speaking again. Do you love her, Barry? I think so. I just never thought that I would get married and have a child so soon in my life. I think I was planning on playing on the field for a while. You know, Marcy will have a hard time too. I'm sure she wasn't planning on having a baby so soon either. I just hope you make the right decision for both yourself and Marcy. She's a great find. I know, sis, but this will definitely change my life. I called Marcy back, and she cried when I mentioned we were getting married. She truly was a wonderful person. I was simply not mature enough at the time. Her parents weren't very happy with me, but at least they were glad that I took responsibility for the pregnancy. I don't think I've ever been on their side. They treated me well, but there was never intimacy between us. Marcy always said that in time they would love me as much as she did. The following month, we got married in a small church wedding and had a reception in the community hall. It was nice, even though only our families were present. We didn't have time for a honeymoon, but we had a great night at the motel. I had to go back to work on Monday, and Marcy had classes. Working at the truck stop, I made enough to feed us, but not much more. Marcy's parents helped her by paying for the rest of her education. She was in her final semester and scheduled to graduate with a degree in social work. We lived in an apartment for several months. It was nice enough for us, but we knew it wasn't big enough for a family. We were happy and made love every time we were together. It was probably our young hormones. One evening, I returned from work and saw Marcy sitting at the table with a cup of tea. She went to the refrigerator and opened a beer for me. I worked hard and promised Marcy that I wouldn't drink more than 2 bottles in an evening. "Sit down, Barry. I need to tell you something. Are you okay? Is everything okay with the child? What happened, Marcy?" I was worried because I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning. "I am pregnant. It's like I don't see it," I said, smiling at her. "We will have twins." "What? Are you sure?" I wanted to keep a calm face for Mercy's sake, but inside I was panicking. "Yes, the doctor confirmed 2 heartbeats today. It's a little scary. I wasn't sure how I would cope with one child, and now we will have 2. Everything will be fine." We went to her parents to tell them the news. Her father gave me an angry look, and her mother said she would do everything she could to help us. Then we went to my parents. My father was straightforward, and it became easier for me to talk to him. "Well, son, everything will work out. It always happens. Mom and I are here for you and will help you when you need it." Mom came over and hugged Marcy. She treated her like her own daughter. "Marcy, I'll help you as much as I can. I don't work, so if you need me to watch the kids, just tell me." About a month before the children were born, Marcy's parents came to our apartment. They said they had found a nice house near us and would even be able to give us enough money for a small down payment. To me, it looked like charity on the part of her parents, but Marcy was happy. We really needed more space after having kids. The house payment wasn't much more than the rent, but we knew there would be additional expenses. I thanked Mr. and Mrs. Billings and promised that I would try to pay them back when I found a better job. He told me not to worry about it because there was nothing he wouldn't do for his daughter. Somehow, I realized that this was an injection addressed to me. We got the house ready to move in before Marcy had her kids. Our parents, my sister, and Marcy's brothers all helped us set it up. Our house might not have been very big, but Marcy and I were proud of it. We tried to be careful, but we wanted to christen our home by making love in every room. I received a call at work that Marcy was being taken to the hospital. My mom drove her, and I arrived as soon as I could. I was terrified. Our parents and my sister were waiting at the hospital. The doctor said it would take some time. 6 hours later, our twins were born. Larry appeared first, followed 20 minutes later by Jerry. Everyone said how cute they were. Honestly, I didn't think newborn babies were that cute. Of course, it was a miracle, but they were not beautiful or pretty. They looked a little better after the nurses washed them. Both were reddish in color, bald, and without teeth. They seemed to have brown eyes, but it was hard to tell. I sat in a big chair and realized that I had no idea what was going to happen next in my life. You think you're ready, but in reality you're not. I was now the father of 2 twin boys. After kissing Marcy and looking at my sons one more time, I headed home. I couldn't sleep all night. It's a good thing I took the day off so I could pick Marcy and the boys up from the hospital the next day. My life and dreams changed forever. I tried to be a good husband and father, but I definitely didn't plan to have children so early. I'm sure Marcy felt that way too. I tried to be a good father, helping with the children as much as I could. They ate, pooped, and cried. Marcy was such a good mother. Every time she held one of the boys in her arms, she smiled. I was still confused which one was which. It got better as they grew a few months older. At least I could play with them a little. I worked hard to make ends meet, so my life consisted of work and sleep. This is something adults don't tell children as they grow up. I didn't go out with friends anymore. I tried to do everything right, I really did. I got my CDL license. At that time, only positions were open for long flights, which meant that I would be away from home for weeks. Marcy didn't like the idea of me being away for so long, so I didn't take the job. Instead, I found work delivering food, usually to people's homes. I had a route where I would stop every 2 weeks and fill orders. Sometimes my clients would order items in advance, and I would bring them for the next delivery. I had a very good route with most middle to high-income clients. Although I made good money, I worked long hours. He started in the morning, and some days he returned home only after dark. Marcy and I fought about me not being home, but I explained that I was doing this for the sake of the family. By rearranging my schedule to only work late 3 nights a week, I made Marcy much happier. When the children were about 6 months old, she found a job as an administrative assistant at an elementary school. My mother offered to look after the children. We tried to pay her a little, but she refused, saying she couldn't take money to look after her grandchildren. Because we both worked late, our sex life took a back seat. We would be happy if we made love twice a week. When we did make love, I saw that Marcy was tired and was doing it for me. Crap. This was not at all what I dreamed of. And then it happened. I stopped at Mrs. N.A. Johnson's house with her order. She was in a swimsuit and looked great for a woman of 40. "Barry, would you like a glass of lemonade? It's so hot outside, I thought about taking a swim in the pool." I couldn't take my eyes off her, placed her order on the table, and agreed to a drink, just to stay there a little longer. "Let's go to the terrace and drink lemonade there." I followed her to the pool deck and watched her sway her hips. All the time I thought that I would not refuse her. I sat down in a chair, and she lay down on a chaise longue. We talked for a while, and then she asked me to rub sunscreen oil on her back. This led to sex. "I know you have to go, but next time we can skip the lemonade and just have sex." "I don't want anything more," I said to the naked woman. "I still have to pay you for the order." I got dressed and was ready to leave. She gave me a receipt and a list of orders for next time, but asked me to leave some time for fun. I left her house thinking about what I had done. I felt great, but I also felt guilty. I tried to convince myself that all guys do this, and it only happened once. When I got home that evening, Marcy was in a bad mood and yelled at me about everything. At that moment, I didn't feel so guilty about what happened that day. I felt pretty good in the following days. More mature women on my route often flirted with me, and I always responded with compliments and smiles. When the day arrived to return to the Johnson house, I began to wonder if she would want to continue our games. My answer came when she opened the door for me, wearing only her robe, wide open. "I waited for you. I hope you left some time in your schedule. Barry, just so you know, this is just sex. My husband is always busy, and I have needs. I don't want this to turn into an affair, so it will only happen a few times. I just want you to know this in advance." "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'm glad we're on the same page. I wouldn't want to ruin my family either. You are a very sexy woman, and I enjoyed being with you." We had sex twice more after that. We joked when I made the delivery, but nothing more. Her husband was home several times when I delivered her order, and this was her way of making it clear that our sexual games were over. After that, I started having sex with different clients. I never initiated sexual activity and set rules for myself. The woman had to be married. Even though some of the young unmarried daughters looked great, I kept my hands to myself. What if we fell in love with each other? I wasn't going to ruin my marriage just by having sex. As I already mentioned, I was very young then. Most women seem to have a rule of no more than 3 times. I assumed I wasn't the only young guy they had sex with. It's amazing how sexually active these mature women were. The age range was approximately late 30s to mid-50s. It seems strange now, but at the time I thought this extramarital affair was helping my marriage. I didn't pester Marcy as often, and the guilt I felt made me want to help her more. Life was pretty good. My sales were up and my sex life was great. But one day everything collapsed. I came home early and took a shower. Marcy yelled to me that a package had just arrived and she had to sign for it. I told her to take care of it herself. After getting out of the shower, I got dressed and went to the living room. Marcy sat on the couch and looked at the contents of the package. It was half a dozen nude photos of me with another client, Mrs. Handley. More photos showed me with several other women. I didn't understand what happened. Marcy was crying and screaming obscenities at me, and I was trying to understand what happened and where the photos came from. Marcy kept screaming, and I couldn't think. I grabbed the letter that came with the photos and went into the bathroom to read it in silence. It was a letter from a lawyer. He represented Mr. Fay Robert Hendley in a divorce matter. My husband also sued the company I worked for because of my actions, namely having sex with Mrs. Handley and other married clients. The law firm said they wouldn't sue me if I agreed to be a witness to testify to all of this. What could I say? They had photographic evidence, and I didn't want us to lose everything we had. I found myself in a hopeless situation. Coming out of the bathroom, I was faced with a new portion of abuse from Marcy. She grabbed the letter and read it. "You damn worthless dirty bastard. Get out of my house. I never want to see you again." She continued to shout at me while I was leaving the house. I was completely confused and didn't know where to go. Hoping that my parents would let me stay the night, I went to see them. When I arrived, they started shouting at me. Marcy called and said my boss wanted to see me tomorrow morning. The lawyers also mentioned in the letter that they would be waiting for me at the company's office. All I knew at that moment was that I was in deep trouble. I screwed up big time, I know that. It's too late, I can't fix it. I need somewhere to stay for a couple of days until I figure out what happens next. Mom, I'm so sorry. It's really my fault. I have no other place to go. Barry, if what Marcy said is true, this is unthinkable. You have the most wonderful wife and the sweetest children a man could have, and you gave it all up for what? I know, Mom, but I can't undo what's already been done. Meeting with my boss tomorrow, most likely to get me fired. All I'm asking for is a place to stay for a couple of nights until I find somewhere to live. Mom loved Marcy and the boys, and this upset her greatly. Barry, you can stay in the room in the basement until you find somewhere to live. Just know that I'm on Marcy's side. I love you with all my heart. You are my only son. Mom had tears in her eyes when I came downstairs. The next day, I went to see Mr. Thompson, the regional manager. There were two lawyers representing Mr. Handley in a lawsuit against the company. They laid out all their findings. It seems Mr. Handley hired a private detective to keep an eye on his wife. Once he caught us, he followed me for a couple of weeks. If I had only had sex with her, things wouldn't have been so bad. Because he had photographs of himself with 3 different women, he concluded that I was the one who initiated the sexual activity. This was not true, as women always made the first move, but I could not prove it. There was no chance that they would confirm my version of events. Mr. Curzar Thompson looked at me with a death glare. "This is true? Did you have sexual relations with the clients?" I wanted to explain, but I didn't have any evidence. The lawyers had photographs and said they would not prosecute me if I agreed. I think they knew I had nothing and I would be more useful to them as a witness. "Yes, Mr. Thompson, it's true." He told the lawyers he would contact them after consulting with the legal department. Then he suspended me from work temporarily. To shorten a long story, Mr. Handley received significant compensation from the company. I lost my job, but if I had given them the names of other clients I had relationships with, they wouldn't have sued me. They knew I had nothing and were interested in making things right. They needed the names of the other women in case it came up again. In our state, you can receive unemployment benefits for half the term if you are laid off. I was supposed to get a maximum of 13 weeks, although that was about half of what I was earning at work. I had to give most of the benefit to Marcy for alimony and child support, leaving only a little for myself to survive. A few days later, I moved out of my parents' house. I found a one-room apartment with an elderly couple. Their son moved out, and they had an extra room. It wasn't much, but I didn't need more. They offered to reduce the rent if I helped around the house. I mowed their lawn and painted several rooms. They were kind to me, but they treated me like a child. They wanted me to follow all the rules. No noise, no friends after dark, always lock the front door and call if I wasn't going to be home. I must admit, the woman knew how to cook, so I saved on food. My sister Jane constantly scolded me for what I did to Marcy. She called me a stupid bastard and said she never wanted to talk to me again. I tried to tell her that I was really sorry, but she didn't listen. In the weeks that followed, I continued to look for work. When I tried to get any job related to sales or driving, I had to provide previous jobs and the reason for leaving. Nobody wanted to hire a person like me. Mom still looked after Marcy and often came to visit her to see the boys. I think they were the only ones who still loved me. I really screwed up my life. When Marcy filed for divorce, there was no point in fighting for anything. She received a house and furniture. I was left with alimony and child support based on my salary at the time of employment. When I went to pick up my things with the police, I told Marcy how sorry I was. She cried when I left. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to see your smile. I just wanted to see you smiling in the purple rain. Purple rain, purple rain. You often hear how young people take their own lives. Now I understand why. I couldn't be at a lower point in my life. They say you don't know what you have until you lose it. This describes exactly how I felt. God, why did I take everything for granted? If it weren't for my sons, I would have driven to the nearest cliff and thrown myself off it. When I started drinking, the Wilsons asked me to move out. I couldn't blame them. Who wants to keep a drunkard in their house? I found a room in the slums because that's all I could afford. I was already behind on alimony and child support. I was waiting for them to arrest me and put me in prison. My room was at the back of the bar. Joe gave me a free place to live if I kept things tidy and ran a few errands for him. He also paid me $20 a day in cash, which allowed me to buy food. There's something to be said about Marcy. She always brought the boys to Mom so I could see them. She told my mother that I was their father and that she hoped that one day I would put my life together. She never scolded me and stopped calling me names. For some strange reason, she spoke well of me to the boys, even though they were still babies. I often wondered if it was possible that we would ever get back together. This thought was probably one of the few things that helped me cope with the situation. One day, there was a knock at the back door. I thought it was the police coming for me for non-payment of child support, but it was my father. "Barry, can I come in? I need to talk to you." As I already mentioned, my father was a straightforward man. He didn't mince his words and always told the truth. "Dad, I really screwed up and I don't know what to do. I tried to look for a job, but no one wants to hire someone like me by this point." I was almost crying. "Barry, that's why I'm here. I spoke to Roy Skelton at the freight yard, and he's willing to offer you a job." "God, Dad, I'll take her. I'll do whatever it takes." "Calm down. Barry, let me explain. This is a truck driver's job. The pay is good, but you won't be home very often." "Dad, I don't have a home right now. I just want to do the right thing for Marcy and support my boys. You will travel all over the country. You will be able to be home a few days a month at best. I just want you to know that this is a really lonely job. I started my driving career the same way and was eventually able to transition to short routes. Why is Mr. Skelton doing this? He remembers how you worked in the warehouse and did a good job. Besides, I'm his oldest driver, and I told him I'll vouch for you. Just keep your nose to the wind and everything should be fine." As I hugged my father, I felt good knowing that he never gave up on me. "Barry, I mean it when I say it's a lonely job. You will make friends on the road, and your best friends will be other drivers in the same job. Roy said he's expecting you tomorrow." The next day, Mr. Gaines Skelton explained the work to me. It was a combination of daytime and kilometer tariff, and I will use his cabin, so he will receive 15% of my earnings. If I ever bought my own truck, I would get extra money. Now I can't afford anything. After leaving the depot, I went to my mom and dad to tell them I got the job. Jerry and Larry met me at the door. When I saw their smiling faces, I realized that I was doing this for them, even if I rarely saw them. Mom hugged me and said that since I would only come a few days a month, I could live in a room in the basement. This way, when I'm home, I can see the boys. I hugged her and thanked her. She knew I was trying to piece my life together. I told Joe at the bar about my new job and thanked him for his help when I needed it most. Then he told me that he was my father's friend. Again, I had to thank my father for being there for me. Not only did he help me, but he also made me learn to help myself. I started working the next week. The first couple of weeks were great. I had a new job and I saw a lot of new places. Then everything became as my father said. I felt lonely being alone for so long. I started making friends with other truckers. Each waitress seemed attractive to me, and I began to get along well with some of them. The highlights of the month were the few days I spent at home. Marcy always tried to make sure the boys came to see their mother, even if it was the weekend. I loved spending time with the kids. I quickly caught up with all the alimony and child support payments. Never heard a word from Marcy when I was behind. Mom said she was just copying the best she could. She didn't lose faith in me and knew that I was trying. The months flew by quickly. It's been a year since I started my new job. It was hard when I couldn't be home from my son's birthdays and holidays because I was always on the road. I only saw Marcy a couple of times when she picked up the boys. She was so beautiful and I missed her so much. We never really talked, but every time I saw her, I realized how stupid I was. Before I knew it, another year had passed. One day, when I was at home, my mother told me that Marcy wanted to see me. I almost flew up with joy, but my mother did not smile. I went to Marcy. When I knocked on the door, a tall, elderly man opened the door. "Is Marcy here?" I asked. "You must be Barry. Please come in. I'm ready." I was confused. Marcy came up to me and Tom told her that he would be in the other room if she invited. "Who is he?" I asked. "And what is he doing here?" "I'm marrying Tom." "He's a whole life older than you. Why are you doing this?" "I know that Tom is older than me. 16 years, to be exact. You have to understand that the boys and I need stability in our lives. Tom is a wonderful person and loves boys. He will not take my sons from me. Barry, he has no intention to replace you. You will always be their father. They need a male role model in their lives on a regular basis. They start school, and their lives change a lot. What about you? You love him? He has helped me a lot over the last 2 years. Yes, I think in a way I love him. He is kind, considerate, honest, and I enjoy being with him. Then why am I here? I wanted to tell you myself. I didn't want you to find out from someone else. I want you to know that he will not replace you as their father. He understands this. When you are home and want to see the boys, I will do everything possible to make it happen, and you won't have to pay child support anymore. I had tears in my eyes as I turned to leave. My heart sank to my feet. Marcy saw it too, and she also had tears in her eyes. "Marcy, I really screwed up. I lost the only woman I've ever loved. I wish you and Tom all the best," I said and left her house. I returned to my mother to see my sons. From my sister Jane, I learned that Tom was a teacher at school. His daughter was 19 years old and leaving for college. His son was 21 and living on his own. Tom's wife died of cancer 4 years ago. Although he was deeply saddened by her loss, he did his best to raise his children alone. Jane also mentioned that he was a teacher about 3 years ago. The whole community loved him. Jane explained to me that Marcy was broken after our divorce. She loved me, but could never completely forgive me. Tom and Marcy became friends and then started dating. Tom's children were happy for their father because he was so sad after his wife's death. When he met Marcy, he became happy again. They were a little worried about the age difference, but they trusted their father. Knowing that he would no longer be lonely, they were happy for him. Marcy was selling her house to buy a bigger house so the boys could have their own rooms. Tom was planning to rent out his house. When he dies, the house will pass to his son and daughter. Everyone was happy with the agreement. My parents thought Tom was a good person. The boys loved him and called him Tom. They called me Dad. In the following months, after the wedding, I only came home for 2 days before heading out again. It was hard for me to see Marcy with another man, but what else did I expect? Several more years passed. One day, the boys told me that I looked fatter. I laughed, but they were right. Sitting on your butt for 14 hours a day will lead to this, so I decided to do something about it. I joined a national fitness club. Every night or whenever I had the opportunity, I worked out at the club. Not with strength training, but more with endurance exercises. I started walking instead of sitting. The next time the boys saw me, they said I looked different. I continued to exercise regularly. It made me feel good, plus I met a few women there. I met some when I was in certain cities, but I always made sure they weren't married. Single and divorced women were okay for me. I didn't want to jeopardize my job again. I went to see prostitutes several times, but it didn't seem right to pay for what other women give for free. Besides, I needed companionship as much as I needed sex. Having dinner and watching a movie with a woman was much more enjoyable than just a quickie. There were a few women I could have gotten serious with if it weren't for my job. Not many women want to get married knowing that they will only see their spouse a couple of times a month. Rose was one of these women. She was a waitress in one of the towns I often passed through. I did my best to stop where she worked every time I was around. It was she who suggested that I join a national fitness club if I really wanted to stay in shape. She was divorced and raised her daughter alone. Her ex-husband was a truck driver, and when she found out he was cheating on her, they had a big fight. For the sake of her daughter, she forgave him and took him back. When she found out he cheated on her a second time, she kicked him out. He didn't pay child support for their daughter, and she didn't know where he was. After she told me a little about herself, she asked me about my divorce. When I didn't say anything, she guessed that I was to blame. I finally told her the truth. She was such a wonderful woman, beautiful, smart, and usually happy. When I had to stay overnight near her house, I spent time with her. We went out to dinner or to some entertainment events. We became good friends, and yes, they were friends with benefits. Besides my ex-wife Marcy, Rose was the only woman I had feelings for. But it was not love, it was close friendship. We both knew this wouldn't last forever. I saw her once or twice a month. Being with her made me realize how much I missed Marcy. For some reason, I couldn't let her go. One night we drank a little more than usual, and suddenly, I asked her to marry me. She looked at me, kissed me, and smiled. "Barry, I love you as a good friend, just as you love me. We both know that marriage between us will not work, and I could never marry a man who spends most of his life on the road. You and I are great friends, and we should stay that way. Besides, you're still in love with your ex-wife. You called me Marcy 3 times during sex. I really feel sorry for you, but you need to try to forget her. She is no longer a part of your life." I knew Rose was right. My problem was how to get rid of the memories. About 2 years passed when Rose told me that she had found someone. I was happy for her, but I knew I would miss her. She deserved a good life with a good man, and I wished her the best. The next time I was in town, Rose was no longer working at the restaurant. Life went on, and I watched my boys grow up without me. I did everything I could for them, but life passed me by. They were great guys. Marcy and Tom raised them well. I took them fishing, and they knew how to put bait on a hook. Tom taught them. Even when we went to baseball games, they knew all the rules because Tom explained everything to them. Tom did everything I should have done. I just wasn't there for them. Strangely, they weren't mad at me for it. They always greeted me with the words, "Dad, we are so glad to see you." I've been on the road for over 8 years now. Rose was part of my past. I remember her telling me to take care of my family. She knew that I loved my sons. One day, I went to the office to talk to Roy Skelton, my boss and the owner of the company. "What can I do for you, Barry?" he asked. "Mr. Benning Skelton, my father mentioned that Floyd Booth was going to retire. I would like to know if I can take his route." "Well, I see no reason why not. The only problem is that you will need to have your own truck for this route. Mine are only used for long trips." Sir, I talked to Floyd and he offered to sell me his truck. I have enough money for a large down payment, and he said he would accept payments for the balance. Barry, I want to say that you have been a valuable asset to our company. I couldn't have asked for a better driver. The route is yours. Did you know that it pays less than the long-distance route? Yes, sir, I know, but it will give me more time with my family. Thank you, Mr. Skelton. I really appreciate it. You deserve it, Barry. Congratulations. I left his office a happy man. Maybe my life will become a little more normal. I told Mom and Dad about the new job. Of course, Dad already knew about this. I wouldn't be away from home more than 2 nights a week, so I told my mom I was going to find an apartment closer to them. It was time to move out of their basement, even though I was only there a few days a month. I called Marcy and asked her to come see my mom because I needed to talk to her. She arrived after school and brought the boys. It was always nice to see them. Since they grew up a little and started going to school, Mom didn't see them as often. Damn, she looked as beautiful as ever. My heart sank a little, but I tried to behave normally. Barry, you look good, she smiled. I continued to go to the fitness club to keep fit. Sitting on my butt for up to 14 hours a day added on the pounds. I must say, you look as beautiful as always. I noticed that she was a little confused, so I continued to explain why I wanted to talk to her. Marcy, I got a job as a driver where I won't be away more than 2 days a week. I would like to see if it would be possible to see the boys more often and be more involved in their lives. I'm glad you want to see the boys more often. What do you mean? You know that they are quite busy with school and various sports clubs. They have a busy schedule. I don't want to interfere with their studies. Will I be able to go to their games and other events? Maybe they can come see me on the weekends if they want. Are you still going to live here? Boys often come here to see your mom and dad. No, I'm looking for an apartment. It's time to have your own home. I'll let you know when I find something suitable. I don't want to interfere in your life with Tom, but I want to see the boys more often. I don't see any problem, Barry. They are your sons, and you have every right to see them. I'll give you copies of all their school events. Your mom is already getting one. I'm sure everything will work out. I'm so glad you want to be more involved in the boys' lives. They really love you, Marcy said, smiling. I found a nice 2-bedroom condo for rent a mile from my mom's house. There was even a swimming pool, which I knew the boys would love to use when they came over. Since my sister Jane was talking to me again, I asked her to help me choose furniture. Are you seeing anyone in particular, Barry? She asked one afternoon. Why do you have free girlfriends? Don't even think about it, she laughed, knowing that she introduced me to Marcy. I don't know if she could have guessed that I still had feelings for Marcy. I felt a little out of place when I went to the boys' first baseball game. When I arrived, I saw Marcy, Jane, Marcy's parents, and my parents sitting together on folding chairs. That's when I remembered Tom was a coach. I forgot about it, although the boys mentioned it. I couldn't sit with them because I would feel out of place, so I sat in the stands. Marcy looked at me and seemed surprised to see me. She must have told the others because they all looked at me. Then I saw my sons. Their t-shirts said Hopkins. The only problem was that I didn't know which one was which. They still looked the same. Number 8 hit a long ball. Run, Larry or Jerry, whoever you are, I shouted in emotion. It was such a pleasure to cheer for my son. Some people laughed, but I didn't care. The woman next to me said, Larry is number 8 and Jerry is number 9. It's really hard to tell them apart. Thank you, but I think people laugh because they are my sons. I'm Barry Hopkins. Thanks for the info. While we were talking, Larry was running towards third base. He glided into the base safely to the cheers of all the fans. The woman next to me introduced herself as Elaine Brady. Her son was also on the team. Jerry was next to bat. I shouted, Come on, Jerry, bring your brother home. Just keep your eye on the ball. I couldn't help myself. I watched my boys play baseball for the first time. I must have been pretty loud because as Jerry walked up to the plate, he looked up into the stands and smiled at me. I was nervous, praying that he would hit the ball. Make me smile. The boys gave Marcy their gifts. When she saw the Victoria's Secret box, a worried look appeared on her face. Jane looked at me too. Tom was inscrutable. "Open it, Mom," Larry said. When she opened the box and saw the pajamas the boys had picked out for her, she looked at me. But I tried to look as innocent as possible. She opened another box from Victoria's Secret. This time she laughed when she saw the hippo slippers. Another pair of slippers, she said, were perfect for her pajamas. She then opened the perfume, thanking the boys for the wonderful gifts. From her look, I realized that she guessed that the perfume was from me. During dinner, everyone asked the boys why they were in the Victoria's Secret store. They said that they were looking for pajamas for their mother, but did not find anything suitable, so they simply bought beautiful boxes for gifts. This put everyone in a good mood. It was so wonderful to see Marcy so happy. New Year's came and Elaine invited me to go with a couple of her friends to a party. I thought it would be fun and agreed. Mom said the boys could stay with her. I went out with Elaine several times and it always ended in sex. I thought this would be a nice way to ring in the new year. Jack and Cindy were longtime friends of Elaine. At one point, I looked back and saw Tom and Marcy sitting with Jane and Jim. Seeing them, the joy of the evening disappeared from me. I was glad when midnight came and everyone started kissing. Marcy came over and kissed me lightly on the cheek. After she returned to Tom, I decided that I had probably put too much into it. We left after midnight and went to another party. I felt more comfortable because Marcy wasn't there. Elaine and Cindy were great fun, and we all drank more than our share. My slutty side came out, and I hoped sex would be offered later. When I drove Elaine home the next morning, I told her I had a great night. "Barry, you're a good guy. Your problem is that you're still in love with your ex. Most men in your place would be happy. You need to forget her and enjoy life to the fullest." I knew she was right, but I liked seeing my boys. Even being around Marcy made me happy. I never saw Elaine again after that night, although it was a new year I will never forget. Several months passed, and one evening I received a call from Marcy. She sounded excited. "Marcy, what happened? Can you pick up the boys for the night and take them to school in the morning? I need to take Tom to the emergency room." "Sure, no problem. Do you know what's wrong with Tom? He's had a stomach ache for some time now. Now he says it hurts a lot. I know Tom, and if he decided to go to the emergency room, then he is in serious pain. I'll pick up the boys. I hope everything will be okay with Tom. He's a really good person." It was difficult for me to say these words, but it was true. He was the person who had everything in order. Everyone loved him. The only problem for me was that he was with Marcy. The day after I sent the boys to school, Marcy called and said Tom was being kept at the hospital for tests. I told her not to worry, that I would take care of the boys, and she could stay with Tom. The boys stayed with my mom that night because I had the night shift. When I returned, my mother said that Tom had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Doctors gave him 2 months to live due to the advanced stage of the disease. Surgery was not an option. He was discharged with several medications. I went to see him and Marcy. It was so strange because he looked normal, but as he explained, his internal organs were in terrible condition. "Have you thought about trying to fight this?" I asked. "Barry, the chances of survival are about 5% if I go through all the operations. I'm not going to put Marcy and the boys through that kind of suffering. I love them too much. Besides, the doctors don't think I can go through all the surgeries. The cancer has spread to other organs." On the way back home, I thought about how unfair it was that people like Tom die at an early age while people like me live on. A month later, Marcy called saying that lucky him back to the hospital. I went after the boys and brought them to my home. The next day, we went to visit Tom in the hospital. The boys cried on the way to the hospital. "Sorry, Dad, but Tom was like a second father to us," Jerry said. "I understand, boys. It's hard to understand why God takes people like this volume so early. We will probably never understand this. Just be glad that Tom will be with God and will no longer suffer. You are lucky to have such a wonderful person like Tom in your life. He was special and loved you and your mom very much. Don't be shy to cry when you lose someone you care about. There is nothing unmasculine about this. We went to Tom and the boys hugged him. They both told him how much they loved him and how much they would miss him. He tried to calm them down, reminding them of the value of shared memories. The boys then sat with their mother in the waiting room, and Tom asked me to be alone with him. Barry, I've known for a long time that you still love Marcy. It's just something you can feel. I want to thank you for respecting our marriage. You must have felt uncomfortable at some points, but you behaved like a real man. I want you to look after Marcy and the boys. Our sons are great guys. You couldn't ask for better. I'm so proud of them. As for Marcy, she still has feelings for you. Some things we just know. Please give her time and take care of her. I had tears in my eyes when I left the room. Again, I wondered why God takes people like him and leaves people like me. Maybe he needed another angel nearby. Tom died the next day. For the first few months after the funeral, Marcy was busy getting things going, so I didn't see her much. The boys came to see me every couple of days. Jane said that she was helping Marcy sort out Tom's things. Tom had a will and planned everything in advance. Jane said his old house and furniture were given to his adult children. Marcy received the insurance money, and all marital property was left to her. She and Jane collected all of Tom's personal belongings and allowed his children to take whatever they wanted from their father's belongings. She left some of his baseball memorabilia for Larry and Jerry because he promised them some. I saw Marcy a couple of times at my mom's, but never long enough to talk to her alone. She was busy, but I hoped things would get better for her soon. A month later, Mom invited everyone to a barbecue. Marcy said she would try to come. On the day of the picnic, Jane came with Larry and Jerry, but without Marcy. "Where is your mother?" I asked the boys. She was going to come, but she had problems. "She'll try to come later if she can sort them out," Jerry said. "What's the problem, Jerry?" "The garbage disposal has stopped working and the sink is full of dirt. She's been so busy, and now this too. Tom usually did these things." I looked at my father. "Where is your toolbox for plumbing and electricity?" "On the work table in the garage," my father answered. "Can I borrow it for a while?" My father knew I was going to help Marcy. "Do you need my help?" he asked. "No, thanks, Dad. I think I can handle it myself." I told my mom that I'd be back by the time the picnic started, and I went to the garage to get some tools. A few minutes later, I was at Marcy's. "Barry, what are you doing here?" she asked when she opened the door for me. "I heard that you need a repairman, and I have free time." "Take me to the garbage chute." The boys were right. The sink was full of dirt, and the garbage disposal didn't work. I pressed the reset button, and it worked, but nothing went down the drain. I started taking everything out from under the sink. "Barry, you don't have to do this." I was going to call a plumber. "Marcy, you need help, and I know what I'm doing. Besides, we have a picnic in 2 hours." I smiled at her, then asked for a bucket. While disassembling the garbage disposal pipes, I discovered that the filter was clogged with eggshells and potato peelings. When I removed the filter, all the dirt flowed into the bucket. I put the pipes back together and told her to try turning on the garbage disposal. When it worked properly, I collected my tools and turned to her. "Okay, the boys said your toilet is leaking. This is true?" "Yes, but you don't have to." "Marcy, I'm here to help. Let me try." She smiled and nodded. While she put everything back under the sink, I checked the toilet. After confirming that a new valve was needed, I went to the hardware store. It took longer to buy the part than to fix the toilet. "Okay, what else needs to be done before we go on a picnic?" "The house is a mess. I can't just leave him like this," Marcy said. "Go do what you need to do. I'll load the dishwasher and wash the kitchen floor." She looked at me as I took up the dishes. Apparently, there was no point in arguing with me, so she went into the living room and started vacuuming. "What else do you want to do?" I asked when I finished cleaning the floor. "I need to take out these boxes of Tom's things. Some I want to put up in the attic and others I want to take to the Salvation Army. His children took what they wanted. I don't need the rest of his things. I'll try to sell the ones in the attic at a garage sale. I carried the heavy boxes out to the garage and loaded the Salvation Army clothes into my car to take away. While I was doing this, the phone rang. Yes, we will be there in 15 minutes. Yes, he fixed it. I think so too. Okay, see you later. It was Jane who called. She wanted to know if I would go on a picnic. I told her we'd be there in 15 minutes. What did she say that made you say, I think so too? She thinks you're a really caring person and have changed. Marcy, if you need anything, please call me. I'm serious. Now let's go. We need to stop by the Salvation Army and then have a picnic. I'm starting to get hungry. We made a stop, then went to Mom. The food was ready and they were waiting for us. While eating, I talked to the boys. Tomorrow you two have to lift heavy boxes into the attic for Mom. Also clean your rooms and make your beds every morning. You need to help your mom more. This is a difficult time for her. Oh yes, and the grass is already quite tall. I leave it up to your discretion as to who will mow and who will trim. Everyone was a little surprised that I intervened. After all, I had never interfered in the upbringing of Marcy's children before. Even the boys looked surprised. But Marcy didn't say anything. Do you want to go to the baseball game next weekend? I have 4 tickets from work, and I thought you might be interested in going, I told the boys. It would be great. We haven't been to a game since last year when Tom took us, Larry said. Don't be afraid to talk about him, Larry. He was a wonderful man, and you should keep his memories close to your heart, I said. Dad, what are you going to do with the extra ticket? Jerry asked. Don't know. Do you have a friend you want to take with you? What about Mom? She always came with us when Tom took us, Jerry answered. I looked at Marcy. Do you like baseball? Would you like to come with us and the boys next Saturday? Yes, I like games, but I have so much to do, she said. Jane intervened. Marcy, you need to get out. I think you should go and enjoy it. Everything that needs to be done can wait. I was surprised that Jane said Marcy should go out with me. Maybe I really have changed. We had a great time at the game. As the boys told me about the players, I thought again about how Tom taught them so much. Just sitting next to Marcy and seeing her smile made my day. I felt like we were a family again. After the game, we went to a pizzeria. While we were waiting for our order, Larry tapped me on the shoulder. Dad, can we go to an amusement park this year? It depends on your mom, but I don't mind, I replied. Marcy gave me that "you want me to be a bad cop" look that made me smile. Don't know. I'll talk to Aunt Jane and maybe she'll take the girls too. Our pizza arrived and the boys started talking about the game again. I really enjoyed spending time with them. Barry, I'll let you know about the amusement park after I talk to Jane, Marcy said when I brought them home. That sounds great to me. I waved to the boys and drove away with a smile on my face. I couldn't believe it when I received a call from Jane the following week. Barry, what are your plans for Marcy? I see that you still care about her, but what do you want from her? Sister, I love her and always have. I screwed up big time and I know it. I'm just taking it one day at a time and hoping I can get her back. I never interfered in her marriage to Tom. She's a widow now, and I'll do anything to get her back. I will never hurt her again. Well, she called about the amusement park and wanted my opinion. I told her I thought it would be fun. Jim wants to go too. Just promise me you won't rush her. She's vulnerable right now and really needs another friend. Sister, I want to be that friend for her and for the boys. The amusement park was fun. We let the kids run around in front, watching them. All the adults went on the rides together. Marcy and I held hands a few times, although I didn't push her at all. Over the next month, I saw more and more of her and the boys. One afternoon when I brought the boys home, I decided to take a chance. This was the beginning of our dates. We went out at least every 2 weeks, sometimes with the boys, sometimes just the two of us. We went to dinner with Jane and Jim several times. One day, when I went to see Marcy, She said that her parents wanted to see me. I was scared, even though I was a grown man. These were the people who never loved me, and I cheated on their daughter. While the boys were playing outside, her father looked at me and began to explain why I was there. Barry, I know you thought we never cared about you, but we didn't. We liked you, but we thought you were too young for marriage. Marcy's pregnancy was as much her fault as it was yours. Now that you two are dating again, she wanted us to know. Barry, we are friends with your parents, and we know that you have really tried to change your life. You don't need our approval to date Marcy, but you have it. Just think twice before you make decisions. And most importantly, we don't want Marcy to get hurt again. Mr. and Mrs. Billings, I have matured and realized my mistakes. I'm not going to repeat them. Please know that I love Marcy and our sons. They are my life. Marcy and I are taking it one day at a time. We understand that and appreciate your honesty. After our conversation, I stayed for dinner. I felt like Marcy and I were dating for the first time, only we were older, and now I had her parents' permission. Since everything was now open, we spent more time together. I have never stayed overnight at her house. We wanted the boys to know that we were working on our relationship, but weren't there yet. One night, she told me that people at work were happy to see her back to normal after Tom's death. Very few people knew that she was dating her ex-husband, but some people thought she was dating someone too early. Barry, I need to tell you about Tom and me. Please don't interrupt. I have to tell this if we want to move on. When you cheated on me, I hated you. I can't describe how much I wanted you to just die. After the divorce, my feelings changed. I hated what you did to our family, but deep in my heart, I still loved you. It was tearing me apart. That's when I met Tom. He was handsome, strong, older, and wiser. He told me to stop carrying hatred inside me. It wasn't good for me, and life is too short to hate people. Nothing she said was new to me. I really hurt her when I cheated on her. Moreover, I destroyed what we had as a family. We became friends. He told me about his family and the death of his wife. After we spent more time together, we became good friends. You asked me years ago if I loved him. At that time, I loved him very much, but I didn't know if it was love. He helped me get through some very difficult times. When he asked me to marry him, I said yes. He was a wonderful husband, kind to me and the boys. We got along and hardly argued. When you came back into our lives, he asked me if I still had feelings for you. I told him the truth and said that we stayed, but I convinced him that I would never jeopardize our marriage. He understood and trusted me completely. If you asked me today if I loved him, the answer would be yes. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a different feeling compared to what I felt for you. Please understand that if we are together, maybe sometimes I will compare you to him or even accidentally call you Tom. I'm still not sure about our relationship, but I'm ready to try. I just want you to know that I really love Tom and I love you. Marcy, I love you, and we'll work it out as we go. I'm not going to lose you again, I said when she finished. Thanksgiving Day was approaching. Mom asked Marcy and I to invite her parents to dinner. The Billingses agreed, and that was our plan. I decided to take it one step further and ask Marcy to marry me again. I felt like we were ready, and I wanted the whole family to know how I felt. Jane's boys and daughters sat at a separate table, and I sat next to Marcy. When it was time to eat, my father asked me to say a prayer. Everyone was surprised, including Marcy, but Dad and I agreed on this in advance. I stood up and began to pray as everyone bowed their heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful Thanksgiving and forgiveness. Lord, thank you for the family and friends who are all here to share this wonderful meal together. Lord, I especially want to thank you for Mercy and our sons, who mean the world to me. This is what I hope will be the first of many Thanksgivings we will spend together. In this regard, I would like to ask Marcy to be my wife again, to love and respect, until the day she dies. Amen. I turned to Marcy and got down on one knee. Then I opened her set of rings that she had many years ago. Marcy, will you marry me? Barry, why are you asking me now? Oh my God, These are my wedding rings that I threw at you. All these years later, I kept them for this occasion. Today they sparkled as they did then, many years ago. Marcy, I love you and I know you love me. We have two wonderful sons and wonderful families who support us. I want to get married before Christmas so I can be there when my sons and my wife open their presents. I promise you that I have matured and will be a better husband if you say yes. Marcy looked around at everyone at the table. Nobody said a word. Even the boys were silent. I was still on one knee. When she didn't say anything, I was afraid I was too hasty. She folded her hands and said a prayer. When she finished, there were tears in her eyes. Yes, Barry, I will marry you. Everyone at the table started talking at the same time. I leaned over to kiss her before putting the wedding ring on her finger. When are you going to get married? We can be there, asked Larry. Probably in a couple of weeks. Give us some time to plan everything. And yes, you both can be there, Marcy replied. Will we only have one Christmas this year? Jerry asked. Marcy told him not much would change. We'll still go to Grandma Billings for Christmas Eve, open presents at home on Christmas morning, and then go to Grandma Hopkins for dinner that evening. Dad, will you take us shopping to that store again so we can buy Mom something beautiful? Last year, she was very surprised, and all she received was a beautiful box. Jerry, I'll tell you what. Since you like this store so much, Larry and I will go to Victoria's Secret again this year, and I will find something for your mom for Christmas. Marcy looked at me with her mouth open as everyone laughed. This year, I was just as excited about Christmas as the kids. My family was together again, and that's all that mattered. I'm singing along train, I'm just singing along train. What a nice feeling, I'm happy again. The sun is in my heart, and I'm ready for love. I'm walking down the alley. Simply Body Sing, I sing Torin. Thanks for reading my story. Comments are welcome and appreciated. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.